Thank you for joining the panel discussion. As most of you are aware, the team for the ecosystem capabilities Catalyst is here. Kevin and I are leading this panel and trying to keep a very interesting aspect of ecosystem development in the CSP culture on how to get participants in ecosystems to share data, to look beyond the traditional, and to be able to do what ecosystems actually promised to do. 6 months ago, when we started working on this project, one of the most interesting things that happened to us was that we came in with, I would say a lot different, slightly different understanding of what ecosystems actually were. We ended up walking away with the understanding that ecosystems are a lot about, really about collaboration. They're not exactly partnerships or strategic alignments or vertical integrations, but a bit more than that. And that takes a lot of collaboration, data sharing, and planning and design. So we're going to talk about how this Catalyst actually addressed that, took it to took it as a center theme for what we were doing throughout the course of building this guide, and how the journey has been, and share some of those experiences with you. And just for introduction, the scope was to build a playbook on how to actually go about capturing an ecosystem's key capabilities so that other people in different markets could actually learn from that or adopt that or work with that and expand and enhance that. So STC being the champion, we had CSG, IBM, we had Trident, Zira, and Tata Consulting. So we had the whole show and a lot of talent on the project. We had a lot of fun. It was, and it's been an amazing journey. Kevin?
Yeah, sorry. I thought I was on mute there. Yeah, look, I think it was, and I think one of the things we're going to talk about on here is first of all just going to do, for those who haven't, I know Anthony and maybe Dave haven't had a chance to look at the Catalyst in any detail. So we're going to do a kind of, the champ's going to kind of do a walkthrough, and in support of that, there'll be myself and Mike and Leila and Lakshmi and Sylvester if she's on, and then we're going to kind of start exploring and talk about how certain aspects and certain topics associated with it that have come to light. I think the important thing to point out about this Catalyst project is the fact that we not only developed a playbook, which is more than a how-to guide. We then actually went and tested it, and I think the important thing is, over the next, I think yesterday we had TCS gave a great presentation about how they've used it, and last week Zira on their use case, and we've got more next week. But I think where we want to start on this call is really kind of to do, Itzashem is going to give a kind of a walkthrough on it, on the different steps within it, and then we're going to kind of start going into the panel discussion in around the specific topics that Itzashem has outlined. So yeah, I think we're ready to go. Yeah.
Okay, so
just before we jump on, anything anybody else would want to add, or any comments or questions? Please feel free to pipe in and add anything. We want to keep this kind of an interactive type discussion. So rather than just a pure sit back and listen, it would be good to get people to contribute on this and to provide their input.
Karen, we did write a B2B accelerator a few years back, which had some elements of checklists and things in it. It was very much focused on wholesale business, and the examples were all wholesale. And I'm wondering whether this is sort of leading us towards another collaboration artifact that we should be publishing, bringing together both the Catalyst experiences and what's happened in I think it's about 8 years since we produced that particular document. I'm wondering if that's something we should be thinking about.
I think so, Dave. I think, Intisham can provide details specifically in terms of the outputs and the contributions by this team. So we not only used a range of TM Forum assets within the project from everything from capabilities to mapping to frameworks to partnering guides. But also we created this playbook so that it's consumable in both an electronic form, but in a Word document. But also we created a template within CurateFX for any members to be able to use going forward. That's actually, and you'll see as Intisham goes through this, it's a step-by-step guide, a blueprint for ecosystem opportunity, identifying ecosystem opportunities for CSPs. And it's not just be used by CSPs, but also by vendors and consulting organizations, and how better to engage and look for ecosystem opportunities. So I definitely think this is something that is the basis for a really good contribution.
There was also the online partnering guide that we did.
Yeah, TR211.
Jean-Luc. And I'm just wondering if it's time to have a look at all these assets and kind of pull them into a whole. The reason it struck me is that I've just seen a couple of catalysts on ecosystem, on Edge, and they're all about ecosystems really, and ecosystems are enabled by Edge. So I just got a feeling that maybe some tidying up of our assets, kind of a brainstorming workshop might be a good idea in the near future.
Absolutely. I actually was speaking to Jean-Luc on this last week, Jean-Luc Timon, who was kind of one of the author of the TR211. And he and I were co-leading that team on the B2B to X business scenario stuff. And, that was, there is definitely a need for many of those artifacts to be updated. And interestingly, I've just kind of completed some of the judging on the Catalyst projects on their use of CurateFX, and to look at some of them and what they've done in terms of their ecosystem modeling, and actually looking at how they've the significance of ecosystems across many of those catalysts. I think the work done by this team, and obviously I say that because I'm part of the team, but I think it could be very important for many other members as well.
Okay, to your point, Dave, I think that some of those, I suspect a lot of those artifacts might get rewritten, because one of the things that I observed walking into this project, and I didn't think that I would, is that while a lot of us are talking about an inside out and an outside in view, ecosystems essentially are forcing us to kind of not be the center of the universe. As you would probably hear from a lot of coroners in this conference, but potentially, what does that mean? This whole worldview of having these standards that people are somehow going to line up and figure out how to work with you, from a procurement perspective of services, the process, or from a technology perspective where you just take a single view of how to integrate with you. The world is more of an ecosystem. When you talked about the Edge, for example, a couple of catalysts, but when you see a lot of catalysts on B2B to X models, eventually, anytime you talk about the platform economy, you're going to hear things that are rhyming with this theme. The idea is that you're one of many rather than the center of the universe. Ecosystems and not ecosystems. And the more we dug into this, what does this really mean? You're not talking about linear partnerships. We're not trying to write a document, a stepwise guide on how to make your linear partnerships better. But what we're suggesting is that it's not an ecosystem if it's a partnership. We're clearly going out and making that statement and trying to tell you that ecosystems, are different because there's something in it for everybody. People are there because the opportunity gets democratized, right? So you are going to create a platform that's going to allow some level of openness, not necessarily upfront, but eventually. And it's going to create opportunities for participants in ways that is going to come back and create opportunities for you. So take Google, for example. A search business creates opportunity for advertising. And the minute we started looking at some of these ecosystems from the point of view of not being partnerships, not being these strategic or even, vertical integrations, we started to notice a lot of these ecosystems out there. We looked at the AT&T marketplace for APIs. We looked at the recent acquisition of the IoT business by Jio's parent company, Reliance. We looked at Cuvicon in smart homes and saw how it was very different from Google's home automation business, which is not an ecosystem, but Cuvicon by Telecom is. So it was very interesting just tapping into this and letting it guide how we need to start thinking, for example, about just essentially what it takes to build these things. And the idea was that eventually it was going to be about collaboration, right? So if there's something in it for everyone, everyone gets to chip in. Everyone needs to see how the tech is going to come together around that platform that you're proposing, how their interest, the growth of the business is going to come in, and how easily they're going to be able to enter or exit, and is it competitive, right? So started to look at, so one of the things that we did, just to take you guys through and not just to open up the floor a little bit, one of the things that we did was to create tools. We wanted to do collaborative sort of visualization of the whole thing. So for example, like in this case, you're looking at Cuvicon, what kind of a platform it is, who are the people coming together, how are people actually interacting as an ecosystem, who's orchestrating, and are the enablers able to provide those services? Is the value proposition the same for everyone, or is the telecom company saying that by virtue of these being my customers, the old thought, I'm going to be the one who's going to take the cake, and the rest of them have to kind of find their way? Well, that's not going to work, because if it's not interesting for branded partners, they're not going to come into your smart home ecosystem. They can go elsewhere. So we needed to build this into a sort of a modeling and visualizing collaboration between all the partners that could potentially come together with a telecom company, a CSP, a tier one company, and think about how they can add value. And one of the things, the top-down actions that we took, was that we then looked at capabilities instead of the traditional way of looking at capabilities, which are kind of, inside out way of looking at capabilities, saying, okay, this is the whole universe. This is me, the CSP. What are the capabilities I need? Well, we don't take that view in ecosystems, as you know. So in the modeling, we wanted to keep growth as the centerpiece, not traditional value streams, traditional value chains. We wanted to bring this concept of growth loops into the value stream, and saying, how do these digital platforms actually grow when it comes to acquisition, monetization, and retention of customers? And how do you take these growth loops and see how they impact everyone in the ecosystem? Simple tasks, top down, capability identification for the whole group of stakeholders, rather than just the telecom companies. And so this is where it got really, really interesting about data, about how do you get people on the same table? How do you bring them together on a set of tools where they would actually let it out and save months, if not years, in some cases, and try to get stuff done in weeks and days, and use the tools, share the data, and try to start with simple things and be able to model these capabilities so that they can, and so we ended up looking at, the Curate FX tool that you're aware of, that we do a lot of this planning in, and we were able to, one of the things that I'm very proud of saying is that we built this template, although all the catalysts use Curate to develop their projects, but we created a template in which you can actually have all the 9 steps and create a collaborative space for all the participants. Now, one of the things that happens is that people don't know the cadence with which people, the information comes in, and the definitions and things like that. But Catalyst projects are really a great place for learning and collaboration. And so we wanted to use that, make some rules, keep it really free and easy to use from the perspective of come in, provide the information. And then we went on to create these models inside of a collaboration tool called Mural, where we were able to build these models, in great depth in a collaborative environment, where we were able to, for the first time, bring in people and say, okay, who's the orchestrator? Who are the enablers? What does it mean for them? How do they come together to provide services in this ecosystem? Is this a good fit for everyone, right? What are the loops? How do they acquire customers, right? What is the financial kind of a tipping point that would separate this value proposition in one market to the other? If I wanted to bring this to Saudi, for example, how do I do that? It doesn't even make sense to bring this smart home ecosystem to Saudi, where the security needs are different. And so things like that, and then taking it on to mapping and things like that. But then what happens is that you go back and you loop that data back into the Curate tool and try to map this to things like ETOM, things like the new business capabilities repository. You can start looking at the ODA principles and try seeing if your feature set that you're producing as a result of this is going to be able to integrate with your ODA templates, and you can map them to API templates. And can the engineers and the business people work together on this template to achieve something? So that was a very important thing for from a capability point of view. But the lesson that was there was, how do you make it interesting? How do you make it understandable for the participants? They know what they're contributing to. It's high level enough. It's goal oriented enough. It's growth oriented, and they can come back and start to create these feature stories that can then be mapped to all kinds of release trains or downward tools that you can use to develop the ecosystem together between partners. So just a high level walkthrough, which I'm sure is not enough. There's a lot of content we've tried to produce and put it on all kinds of places for people to read about and to access these tools and to get in touch with us as well. But this was just the high level of where this was going. So
how do you? Sorry, go ahead.
How do you guys think about kind of the competitive angle, right? Because, I mean, every time there's an ecosystem play in terms of bringing people together, philosophically, there is never an issue, right? Because it totally makes sense and it's better for everyone. But even, like I look at your first slide where I think you had OpenTable and Uber, and I could see where there's conflicts between kind of like Uber Eats and OpenTable. And as companies evolve and grow, like, I don't know, 2 days ago, Apple's now talking about a search engine, right? Like as these tech companies evolve and grow and go into other areas, how do you kind of see that playing with this kind of grandeur scheme of doing the right thing versus trying to make money?
Absolutely, an awesome question. I'll go first there because it's close to my heart. So I think this is an awesome question in saying the steering wheel is not in your hand. What are you talking about mapping this out for everybody? And so really, we're not mapping it out for everybody. In a way, we're saying we're getting in line on the left side in an ecosystem. We say, okay, what is the changing role that we play? Now, I wish I had the slide. I would have to go and kind of show you a very interesting slide. If I can, if you stay with me, which kind of answers that. While I talk, I want to show you something visually if I'm able to. Wait. So the answer that I would have to that, or a comment, would be that, look, you do it on a continuous basis in terms of value proposition. In this case, what's happening is that you've got platforms. They're tapping into your platforms like identity or location or charging or some sort of IoT delivery system service, or your own payment company. For example, in this case, at the bottom, you see STC Pay. You're looking at you're bringing together some value on the table that OpenTable can use, that Uber and Careem can use, right? They're super apps in their own right, or our platforms in their own right. And as they evolve and they try to take you out of that in a service or go their own way in certain services, well, then this is how your ecosystem is evolving. But you know very clearly the value you're bringing on the table, and you're trying to expand into that value. You're trying to bring new players, you're giving more opportunities because you've thought through and you've got platforms that these companies are using in their day-to-day, rather than just linear supplier relationships, either between you as supplier or them as supplier, which then end up you being dropped on the highway and you have no idea where you are, right? So it kind of captures that in that way. So being able to know your position, I'll give you an example. Telecom companies are constantly investigating customer journeys, for example, right? I make the point, find customers, find people who do great customer journeys, find Uber Eats, right? Provide them a platform where you don't have to actually start from customer journeys. Some customer journeys are taken care of very well by other platforms. Same's the case with supplier journeys, right? A lot of supplier platforms are available to tap into you. What can you do, right? You provide great identity systems, you provide great integration systems, you can provide a lot of good billing systems. In some cases, you can provide settlement. In other cases, you can provide, through acquisitions, like in here, you have acquisitions about delivery companies that come in, that fulfill that need. So you have to think about these ecosystems as being participants, right? So that would be the point. I don't know if I answered that question in some way.
If I can add to that, Tashema, I think also the fact that within our catalyst, what we were focusing on is looking for opportunities within ecosystems. So there's part of the whole, initial ecosystem modeling, and you're going to get the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons of the world, but when you're looking at opportunities in existing ecosystems, so for example, it could be something related to home safety, home insurance, home whatever, and you want to be able to look and say, well, what are the opportunities that we see in there? So one of the steps that we go through as part of the process is to look at existing ecosystems, and then how to look at the opportunities that are potentially within there, that you can add a service that can be that a CSP can add a service where they bring trust and that into it, but competition is just the nature of the beast. So I think you are going to, get into a situation where, you're going to be in the same ecosystem with direct competitors, and it's a case of understanding that ecosystem and understanding the opportunity and having those capabilities that'll deliver that value, that'll make you unique.
And Kevin, Anthony, you'll have to jump in to give me some clarification on that, because I'll keep going. It's talking about us also is a multi-speed ecosystem. It's you have a Google in your ecosystem. He's going at Mach speed. You're on the highway, even on Autobahn is not going to cut it, because these guys are going at a different speed. You are probably their mid-market solution for 3 years, and then they've moved on, or their value proposition has changed, not because of the intentions, but just the way the speed of those. So different people, different partners will come in, are working at different speed, and they're on a different strategic trajectory. So when they come together, one of the ways that the Chinese or the Asian markets handle this is what you're looking at on your screen is a multi-layered kind of an ecosystem, where the customer journey part is taken care of by somebody like AliExpress or somebody. And in the middle, these platforms will actually discover things happening right at the bottom, which is the suppliers and partners. And in between, you've got these enablers, like maybe a telco company, which is coming in with cleaning up the data, doing the identity, doing, all sorts of different platforms that they, the payments, the charging, the segmentation, the maturing, the messaging, and create a plethora of platforms that come together, call them something, plug into them, and participate in that economy. Now, where's the value? Do you want to go upstream, acquire customer journeys, go back, downstream, go upstream, acquire some of these vertical systems, right, that are generating a lot of these opportunities? It gets complicated, but you're at least participating rather than thinking the whole mesh and getting yourself in trouble. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, look, I think you guys are you guys are right, but I think that's like the silver bullet, solving that, because there's value for everyone, right? I was speaking to a company a couple of weeks ago, a fairly big company, and they said, look, the same person that is damaging an apartment in Airbnb is probably not a good Uber rider and may evade fares, right? So sharing that data, for example, right, in terms of fraud and payment, it's almost, if you think about it, it's like what the credit agencies in the US, they're getting multiple sources and creating a profile of you, whereas these big tech companies already have this profile. So sharing this kind of creates this bigger value that could help, and maybe start from the kind of the fraud care aspect as opposed to the revenue generating aspect. Then you have less competition, because people are more concerned, I would say less worried right now about sharing data that helps you avoid fraud and helps you keep good customers versus sharing data that helps you upsell or sell advertising or things like that, if you know what I mean, kind of the split
Absolutely,
model.
absolutely. And Anthony, am I right in I don't know what your experience is, more global than mine, but I will ask you this question actually. If you look at the gray part and you look at this part where if I came in as a tech company and started supplying that data that you're talking about, right? Let's say the upstream and downstream people needed that data to do their business, they saved money and they did better customer care and they did better journeys. Do you think up to now, it's not just that we have data, that we've had the mindset to be able to share that data? We kind of think of that as property that's really valuable, but we never monetize it. We don't know how to use it. So in an ecosystem environment, you want to be able to create a level playing field and a partner. The first thing you want to do is to let them collaborate. Forget about the standards, right, that it takes. It's the first thing is to say, okay, there's something in it for you, which is quite valuable, right? Rather than you wanting to do the whole thing. And now I'm thinking from a CSP's perspective, wanting to do this whole picture and waiting forever is not how it's going to cut it for us. We have to do something that we're really good at and which is really useful for others in this ecosystem, in this pond.
Yeah, for sure. I think also legislation as you look forward, right? I mean, this whole idea of having some type of digital locker where you control your data, you decide who you expose it to, that kind of lends itself to this model, right? And then you can decide which parts of your entity you expose to which company, right? But right now, if you want to if you want to remove your digital footprint, it's probably an impossible task, because if you're giving your information to thousands of companies, right? Created accounts, and the question is, it's the chicken and the egg, right? Like, you need a tipping point in order to make this go, and you need many companies to collaborate. So maybe, I don't know, maybe kind of the EU and the US maybe at some stage coming together with some type of privacy legislation may kind of be the catalyst.
Absolutely. And I mean, even though it's a bad example, but COVID has done things for the industry that no one could, only God could. So, I mean, think about how that's, prepped up things and made us think differently. And, so even there are people that I am talking to these days who are, for the first time listening. Before this, they were like, identity platform, horizontal platforms. Nobody wanted to talk about horizontal platforms. I mean, people are now actually talking about IoT and what you see in the middle in terms of a partner platform that a telco provides. These horizontal platforms are used by so many outcomes in so many different industries that to think about the simplicity of that design, the architecture, was something it was talked about, but it wasn't taken seriously up until now, when things are starting to move. Like you said, perhaps a secure, a privacy initiative would even push it more towards the CSPs taking a lead and understanding. But I think a lot of has to come from inside also. Would you think, where the mindset is locked into doing everything? Yep. I guess.
Yep.
All right. So some good talk.
So I was going to comment on this. In this platform piece in the middle, tend to emphasize the technical stuff, but actually there are business aspects that's like trust, which you might say it's related to identity, but actually at the moment, you decide whether or not you trust a platform with the information. So you make decisions. So you'll be constantly harassed to complete your profile. And if you're like me, I'm pretty impervious to providing certain information. And they can send me as many emails as they like. They're still not going to get it because basically I've made a decision about what level of trust I have with the platform, which is one point. The other thing is too that with trust comes something rather than just charging, comes the idea of an intermediary or somebody who's doing the settlement. So you'll see that on things like eBay and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
You can buy and you pay eBay and they act as an intermediary, a trusted intermediary, to make certain you get the stuff delivered that you ordered, basically. So it is quite subtle, some of this, and I think it's a bit more than just
and deeper
technical functions. Yeah.
To your point, Dave, I mean, think about the GSMA initiative on identity. The reason it won't fly, didn't fly, is because it's not coming from a place of digital, digital citizenship. It's not coming from people who know how to scale digital platforms. It's coming from a place of great structure and low and slow. And perhaps, but you can see that it's not dead. And I can actually see that it's one of the ecosystems that we study that is out there with a telco leading the initiative on identity. And go check out the use cases. It's mind blowing the amount of trust issues that the amount of monetization that trust can create in the market, and not to get greedy about it, but just the stuff that the market needs. Similarly, like you mentioned in charging and settlement, lots of things out there where things can be done. But then you have to also think about not wanting to take that debate to CRMs or taking that debate to infrastructure at your, that allows a lot of the digital stuff that's already there. Some people are great at doing that and just trying to circumvent that or trying to acquire that, rather than taking part in it and scaling the effort. That's been the message.
One of the other things about platforms, or really ecosystems and platforms are related, but not quite the same thing. If you look at a stock exchange, for example, it provides a platform typically for trading. But the thing that really makes it important is that it's trusted to be neutral with respect to both the buyers and the sellers. It's trusted in that respect. And the other thing too is it's able to create liquidity, which is, as a buyer, if I want to buy some shares, I can buy them, and if I want to sell them, I can sell them. Which the alternative to an exchange is I have to go and send emails to lots of people or search for people who are interested in the shares that I've actually got or the ones that I want. So an exchange as an ecosystem actually depends on having large numbers of buyers and sellers. And a digital platform, you may not actually be changing, money may not be changing hands, things like Facebook and those sorts of things. But you are actually trading something else, which is usually information. But I think that this point about general marketplaces is about getting enough buyers and sellers, getting enough people to meet to want to do something. And also there's an issue of liquidity, particularly in selling, in that, if I'm trying to find something, the probability of me finding what I want and enough suppliers of that one thing is sufficiently high to make it worth my while going on to that particular ecosystem and that particular platform.
I mean, think about a smart home ecosystem. I'm sorry, did somebody want to say something?
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, just back to your point, Edisham, before, I think you have two contradictory things here. On one hand, you have consumers that probably have one of the highest levels of trust with their service provider versus some of the tech companies and what they do with their data. On the other hand, they think that, rightly or wrongly, the perception is, if you want to move fast and you want to get something done and you want to have a seamless experience, you need to work with, you need to connect and work with the tech companies, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have these two contradictory things. And I think going back to your point before about, if we as an industry, I think, at least I've always believed that we are in the best place to come up with something like a digital locker or this gray area of a hub, right, between service providers. Like you take 5 of the big Galaxy service providers, you're basically covering 3.5 billion consumers across the planet, right?
Yeah.
In terms of users. And nobody has that amount of detail on a person, or that level of scale and that level of security and privacy that you maintain or have been maintaining for dozens of years on an ongoing basis. So I think the question is, how do you now take that and how do you evolve it into something that's pragmatic and that can move at different speeds? I think that's like,
I mean, I'll give you the example of this particular ecosystem we studied. It's Kivik on the Deutsche Telekom's smart home service, and it looks exactly like any smart home service, really. And you know, there are three players in smart homes. It's Apple, Google, and Amazon, and obviously the voice tech is leading that, and there's a lot of different initiatives now. Tech's moving at a real quick pace. These guys come in and they kind of emulate most of the platform. They emulate the structure, but what they do is they do this little thing where the Wi-Fi device is very tightly coupled with your automation system, and hence the security, and hence the ability to keep your data in Germany, and to guarantee a few more things, like, for example, local service providers for installation, and to then add a few more layers of things that you're just, Anthony, yourself and Dave, you're talking about. And so we kind of went in and we captured that as strengths, as capabilities, that if you're thinking about doing this, using this playbook in your market, all you have to do is just pick up the playbook and go look at the capabilities through these steps, and maybe within a couple of days be able to actually come back with saying, okay, what does it take to participate? What are the key value proposition that I need to produce in this market to capture this? So to your point, I mean, most ecosystems that we see are either coming in from a lot of engaged customers, security, payment relationship, and you know, all those things that are really, really great about telcos. And I think after 5G, you'll start seeing that not all telcos will be telcos. You'd have large players turning into these platforms and go regional, simply because of the way 5G promises things. And then a lot of the smaller players will go into the fragmented services that they're good at. So eventually, even the CSPs are going to turn into an ecosystem of connectivity. So this was the effort.
Yeah, I think if I can add, I think one of the things the team looked at as part of this was, providing people with these guide rails, or this blueprint, to the step-by-step guide to work through. But really, as part of that, to do it in such a way that it helped people raise questions. It raised the questions that people needed to answer. It doesn't necessarily have all of the answers, but to me, sometimes the actual question is more important. Being able to say, oh, I hadn't thought of that. I need to think about it from this perspective, or I need to think more about from an acquisition point of view, or going through many of these kind of loops that we looked at. That was, I think this is the one that Leila and the guys did from the smart home. But the purpose of some of the key outputs from the key output really from the team was a playbook, was the guide that enables people to walk through the step-by-step in an iterative way to get to a point where they're able to identify new opportunities and also to understand the capabilities they need. But it's not a 5-minute job. It takes time, and by being able to go through these 9 steps, it kind of adds structure and guidance to help the person on that journey.
It kind of forces collaboration. I think, Kevin, this is the thing that
absolutely.
It forces you won't be able to go through and want to, there's no such thing as designing an ecosystem. Ecosystem is an act of balancing a market. Like I think Dave was mentioning before, that it's all about marketplaces and two-sided, multi-sided. Well, yes, and the idea is that partners have to come together and see if there's a best effort basis value that creates a market, and people play a role in it, and how does it serve together. And so with the playbook designed in a way that from the get-go, you'd have to work together for a result to happen. But what it will do for you, as the reward for working together, is you would have combined capabilities in the end of it, in an amazingly short time, because you're looking at a benchmark, you're looking at the stuff that people are trailblazers are already doing. So that was the idea.
I think the other thing as well that we did as part of the catalyst was the fact that it wasn't just about the creation of a template. It was about the creation of, it was about how that template can then be used in a collaborative way, using, the best tools available for people to use with the information that's available within that. So it's not a case of, well, here's a 70-page Word document, go off and read it and you know how to do it. We wanted to give the people something that they could use. And I think the work by adding a template within CurateFX means that that can now be made available to every other projects teams going forward who want to develop this and want to use it for their own catalyst or internally for themselves. And the beauty of that with it is we've hooked in, the business capabilities from TM Forum. We've hooked in, people can use frameworks, they can use other aspects, as part of this. So it's not just a theoretical template that we've created. It's actually, what we did then was to validate that, we went and we used a series of case studies to actually bring it to life, whether it's the smart home case study or the emergency services or others.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the point. What I was just showing you, this mapping to ETAM and is happening at the capability feature story level, right? So you have a capability. Typically, you have a capability to build someone, right? But what we're doing is you're going in and creating the actual feature story. And that feature story, like in the case of the mural that you were just watching on the Kivikan case study, you had about 40 odd key capabilities here that you need to consider, right? And these capabilities or feature stories, I would say, are the dimensions of those capabilities that you need to consider. And once you if this is your starting point when you want to look at a particular type of ecosystem to participate in, if you're not in Germany, then this is a very good starting point. You can actually know how to build it from scratch, but you can take it from an example and then modify it for your market and go quickly, like Kevin said, to map it to tools, to frameworks, and all those things that should not be linearly consuming too much time. I remember the theme in February in Dubai, in January, I think it was how do we go from 8 months to 8 days? And the idea is, you fundamentally start thinking like platforms. You have to start thinking like that.
I think the other interesting thing, Leila's on the call and Lakshmi as well, who both, were key team members, and Mike as well, but I think it's interesting. I guess, Leila, maybe if you're there, just to give a view on, you kind of bringing the playbook for a test drive, and actually bringing it into production and saying, okay, let's take an example and move it forward. And, so, maybe what were your views on using the playbook for, the work that you carried out? I think you're still on mute. There you go. Yeah.
I'm here. Actually, I think it is the only way to show how actually the playbook can be used is actually to have these good examples that shows how we use CurateFX and what kind of things we are actually putting into all of these, materials that we are producing. So it was interesting journey, definitely. It was a bit challenging, because when you are looking at the ecosystem, you are realizing that you are having a lot of stakeholders, a lot of relations, and then a lot of opportunities. You need to pick up the opportunities that you would like to elaborate on more and things like that. But it is really helping because it is, I think we discussed it even when we started this Catalyst project, that the process should be iterative, and then through these iterative process, actually we are coming to the really nice structure. Once we complete the use case and present it to others, in my opinion, it's really easy that other people understand the all steps that ecosystem Playbook is actually telling how to do it in a structured way. So what Etisham is currently showing is interesting opportunity canvas for the use case that Zira was doing. It is for the Cubicom. And then when you are explaining and showing all of these things with these nice loops, you know, it's graphically nicely presented, then you really understand the how it works, what kind of capabilities do you need, what should be your prioritization in the future, and things like that.
By the way, Leila and Omar, who worked on the project, I mean, there were two people, and in an amazing amount of time with a little bit of research, I think they were able to put all of this together in a very quick period of time. Both platforms,
Very quick,
like
yes.
45 different capabilities they were able to build in a very quick time with details that can map to frameworks. So that was for me very heartening, you know, in terms of like.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, that it was a short period of time. So if you imagine if you actually at the CSP side and you would like to kind of explore something new, some new line of business, and you are looking at the new ecosystem, you know, it's always like a month or like many months that you have to have something that you could actually present to anyone. With this, within the short period of time, you can really produce the good materials. And we didn't, I mean, I think we just spent a couple of weeks to produce something like this.
I think the two things that struck us as well was the fact that, you know, all of us are in different, well, not pretty much all over the world in different countries. So collaboration and being able to do it through tools that are fit for purpose was key. And you know, the fact that it could be done through different time zones, different people being able to contribute and leverage information that's there rather than having to try and wade through PDFs and spreadsheets and all sorts of stuff, it was important. And I think the other aspect as well that was really important was being able to take something that's quite complex, but to be able to present it in a way that is consumable and digestible by different types of people within different organizations. So whether they're looking at it from a business perspective or an architectural perspective or at a C level, that you're able to present information and being able to drill down to different levels is also, you know, the whole concept of, as you've said numerous times, collaboration was key, but also communications is even as important, if not more.
And Kevin, we've had although the group that's here was very regular, you know, Michael and Swashri, Leila, but then we had IBM, and IBM, I don't know if they're represented here, but they were kind of off and on and not really able to participate that much, but they came back with a case study, which I really like. And I think I'm hoping that comes out. I think that's worth waiting for. It's the data monetization in a even non 4G, you know, in a mobile money market, in a developing market, and it's based on East Africa. It's based on the Safaricom case study. Building they're gonna show you how the ecosystem for lending actually works there. So it's a real time. I think Anthony was talking about how you can take that trust data, but a lot of that business data, give it to these little, street side merchants who are lending money to people. So it's one of those very, very interesting, I wouldn't call it use cases. I want to call everything in the post 5G world business models, but it's one of those business models that's coveted around the world. And, so we're hoping that comes out really nicely also, and, one to look out for. And then, of course, Lakshmi's here. These guys are doing this 5G ambulance. I wouldn't call it a case study, but they're kind of trying to capture the ambulatory, the electronic medical services ecosystem, which has a tremendous amount of participation. It's incredible just looking at their the stakeholders that are in there and the value that they create, and how to get everyone to actually feel that they're adding value and that they're getting the best value out of the ecosystem initiative. It's just amazing. So those are two really interesting cases. to look out for, and we're going to record them and actually present them in weeks to come. So we're very excited.
I think, Dave, as well, it would be, you mentioned up at the start in terms of, the output from the catalyst being able to form a contribution. And if I think back to 3, 4, 5 years ago, the work Jean-Luc and I did in around the B2B to X business scenario template, and that contribution was a 26 slide deck that was adopted then as a standard. Where this is taking that and just bringing it to the stratosphere in terms of another level altogether. So it will be interesting once you've got a chance to have a look at some of the output to get your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the origins of some of this work, it was with Osterwalder's business model canvas, and what was interesting about that was that there was a bit of theory behind it, but you didn't need to know the theory, you just need to know what the diagram was and start filling out the diagram. Yeah. And so the barrier to getting started was as low as downloading the diagram, starting to craft your words in the diagram, and then when you got stuck, there was something to go and reference, which you produced a book on this eventually. But you didn't sell the book, you sold the diagram, and the diagram looked like something simple that anybody could do. It was actually a bit more complicated than that. So I think that the visual aspects of this are actually quite important, I think.
And to that point, we did, one of the contributions is this thing called the opportunity canvas. So we actually went and we evaluated a range of different canvases, from the Osterwalder to the Lean canvas, to the mission model canvas, to the platform design canvas, and others. And basically, one of the contributions of this is actually us, what we call the opportunity canvas. And that's something that's will be incorporated as part of the template and the playbook also.
Yeah, and I think that part of the reason for opportunity canvas was, if you notice, that we believe that all opportunity, all capabilities in the overall ecosystem lie around the one question: how does this ecosystem grow? This is the one question. And it's the growth models, these loops that you see on the screen. We found the fundamental ways in which you capture capabilities for an ecosystem is to say, how does it grow? How does it acquire, monetize, and retain customers? And if that doesn't, go to every nook and corner of the organizations that are coming together in the ecosystem and address what kind of BSS, OSS they need, what kind of middle layers, the cloud capability, the journeys, the apps, the user experience they need, it needs to resonate. It needs to kind of capture those key capabilities. You need to be able to, from a growth mindset, look at an ecosystem and say, these are the capabilities I need. Quite too often, we're very linear in the way we want to do design, and we want to just go in and pick things in a steady state. Well, the idea is, pick things out of the growth state, right? So how does something grow? It's proven to grow, and if it does, if that foundation is there, then can I capture the capabilities that I need, from that picture? So
yeah, I think we're nearly up out of time. I don't know if there were any. I don't know if Mike or Lakshmi or any of the other guys on the team wanted to add anything, or Anthony, if you had any other questions. I'm assuming silence is no. So yeah, I think oh, Mike, yeah, I think you're off mute.
Oh no, I was just about to say that I couldn't find my mute button or my unmute button, and secondly, I don't really have anything to add, Kevin. I mean, I think that what yourself and Etishem have and Leila have talked about, I think it exposes pretty well what we've done, and hopefully shows the value of the undertaking and
I think
the different.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think this particular session was kind of more of an interactive session, in that I think there's a couple of other sessions coming up next week, if I'm not mistaken, at the Sham. There's going to be 2 or 3 next week where there are more walkthroughs of the specific, some of the case studies, and also more specific demos on a step-by-step on the actual playbook as well.
Yeah, I just want to say that on our page and also on the LinkedIn group, which we encourage people to join, because we plan on sharing a lot of content there. You can actually see a video capture of the step-by-step guide. You also can download the book with the steps in it, and then of course there's other content like this recorded and put there, so it just makes it easy to understand. And so yes, we're gonna be busy for at least a couple more weeks.
When we did the original B2B2X stuff, we had in the back of our minds a sort of automated business model as a service idea, which is if you could capture a business model like this, then you just push a button and the platform works that way for you, was the kind of the vision. Has that come up at all in this discussion at all? Because this is fine from an analytic point of view, but if you want to get your time to get a new idea to market down to 8 weeks, took 2 weeks to go through this process. So you've now got 6 weeks to get the whole thing implemented. So the next step would be, can you automate this so that this is like business model as a service, basically?
I want to go first. So Dave, I think you can, like, if you look at this template, I mean, this is like, personally, I think I can do this workshop in a day with 5 partners wanting to do this. Yeah. So you could do this in a day. It takes a couple of people 2 weeks to do what normally partners would take lots of resources and just probably take weeks to do. But yes, you could potentially automate it. But again, going back to that, you do consider though. Yes, you could. I mean, the structure is there. Like in a place like CurateFX, you could definitely do it. And we did. I mean, if you look at the CurateFX template, we went in and we created a 9-step guide. You just plug and play, and sometimes you could figure out a way to plug enough information, the rest of it could be created for you. But my point is that the collaboration, the commitment to scenario creation and to discuss the various aspects that will impact your business case for your company. Say you're a small supplier in the whole thing, and you're worried about some sort of a regulatory intervention. So, I mean, those things are important as well. So, but yes, potentially you could, and CurateFX is a good tool to actually try and attempt to do that.
Yeah, and the other thing is, so if you could automate it, and you say you can do it in a day, in your 8 weeks, you could have 3 iterations of a proposal.
Yeah, absolutely. And though, that's the kind of time that the market has appetite for now. It's no longer the case of like extended.
So that was the thing that was running through my mind, was that when I listened to the Edge Catalyst this morning, which was around developer is king, that had same kind of thing, and it's sort of, those were standardized capabilities that were provided in a system which could be configured and tailored according to rules and things like that. You could have this vision of business model as a service.
Absolutely, because one of the things that, using a tool like CurateFX, the data is normalized. It's not in a PowerPoint.
Exactly.
It's data that,
structured.
like, it's structured data. Also, if you've got, for example, you're doing an ecosystem, you can select which TM Form APIs you want to use. Well, that's structured. So there is, you've got the blueprint there, and it's in a structured way that could enable you to do more automation as well. Like, it could be anything from integration to, So absolutely.
So if you've got a product order, for example, and you're using the product API, you might want to in here say, and by the way, the products I want are here, and here's the JSON schemas for them, basically.
Yep.
So you could, behind this, the structured data is extensible, so you could do something like this. I know it's quite.
So like we're currently, So we've integrated CurateFX with things like, with enterprise architecture tools where we provide information through and all of that. So absolutely, that's all doable. And I think, but you need to have that solid foundation first, which is where our goal is to get you to that point from, that ideation to a point of having the plan, and now we want to execute at the next stage.
Yeah, so when I look at the digital platform reference architecture, some elements of what the platform functionality should be is in those documents. And it'd be good to compare that with what you guys have got, because if we went away and built functionality that's in DPRA and you're telling us it's something completely different for practical cases, that wouldn't be a particularly sensible outcome. So there's several possibilities about how this could be used downstream to inform, for example, because the platform reference architecture is not particularly clearly integrated with the ODA work at the moment, which is actually something I'm trying to address at the moment, which is why I was interested in this particular catalyst. Because the vision would be, can we get ODA so that it delivers the functionality which is configured by some kind of tool like this, or the equivalent? I was thinking of Curate FX at the time. This has been a good presentation, actually. It's pretty interesting, thought-provoking.
Excellent. Always
thank
good
you,
to
Dave.
get Dave thinking.
Thanks, Dave. No, but it's a great discussion. Thanks for bringing out the points, and to your point on that automation, obviously the ODA. One of the things that from a business architecture perspective that I think about is that the ability to actually manipulate, at the functional level to kind of have things, stabilize enough components that can just go and fit with a componentized architecture, right? So you can probably have certain feature sets that are always going to behave in a certain way and be very, much reusable, and others that you could just kind of play around with a lot. And so when if you see a feature backlog that's coming in from a particular ecosystem, a way of discovering what part of it is already covered in the overall architecture and has a place to sit already, it just solves such a lot of different, and if you look at it from a collaborative blueprint, not just the CSV data, that's something that worth looking into.
We are doing some work on ODA components, but what my observation is they mostly focus on what I describe as systems of record. And if you follow things like, I think it's Deloitte came up with an architecture called a pace architecture, points out different parts of the architecture evolve at different paces. So there are kind of front ends which may not be highly standardized that handle user interactions. And then there are kind of intermediate systems which capture reusable processes across systems of record. So there's definitely, quite a few challenges to be overcome, but this is a good starting point to kind of a vision of business model as a service.
Right.
Yeah, certainly we do think this is the legs for a phase 2 and a phase 3, definitely.
And there are other people that we could be working with other catalysts, because that's the other thing running through my mind is, if we want to make some of these things real, do we need to kind of mix and match some of the catalysts a bit for the next cycle?
Totally agreed. Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that, but I've just got the question at this particular point in time. Okay, I'm going to have to drop, unfortunately.
Super.
So that was a fascinating
Thanks, Dave.
discussion.
Thanks for dropping by, Dave. Thanks.
And by the way, you will find lots of people listening on the catch-up side on all this stuff. There's been quite a lot of that happening, by the way. Okay.
We hope so. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for taking the interest and participation. Thank you.
Yeah. This
right,
is having put together quite a bit of the B2B stuff, and having done some bandwidth trading work when I was in BT a decade or so ago. This is actually quite an important area, and particularly as we're emerging from a situation where all service providers are under cost pressure. These are in the area of revenue creation, these kinds of things, rather than cost savings. Absolutely. So these, I think, will become much more important over the next couple of years, particularly as the sort of like revenue cost crunch gets tighter and tighter, which is certainly happening in many service providers.
Super.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks for the insights. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. I think it's a wrap there. Hit the shem, as they say.
It is a wrap. Excellent talks. I think some really good participation. I'm really happy that we were able to show the stuff, and I hope that everybody who was participating got what they came for. They got to see some good stuff and some good questions asked. So thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you at the next one.
Definitely. Looking forward to that.
All right.
All right. See ya.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.